Hey guys, what's going on? My name is VK and welcome to a brand new, exciting, phenomenal creations video effect tutorial here inside Adobe After Effects. Hope you guys all doing good. I'm doing amazing since we are creating once more some superhero VFX. And if you follow along the channel, you know I love superhero VFX, not only because they're so cool to create, but also because you request them non-stop. I really love for you to see that. I can see that you request them really non-stop. You want to see superhero VFX and I love to create them for you guys. Today is no exception. Today we're going to create the Ant-Man shrinking effect. And the good thing about this effect is it's a pretty mediocre effect. You don't have to be super advanced in Adobe After Effects to follow along, and you will get some pretty cool results. And talking about results, you probably want to see what we're going to create today. So here's a little video clip to give you guys a hint. Alright, so now you have seen the result we want to get to, and now let's just start building this from scratch again and show you how to create this effect here. Before we go into that, I want to give you guys a little question to shoot out there. When we watch this shrinking clip here, you probably notice something happening with the camera movement. And some of you might be so pinpointed close to your eyes that you can see that it's actually a digital movement, and it is. But it's a pretty good simulation done digitally that simulates a real cameraman moving closer, and then at the end, even angling down the camera, a bit like following the shrinking happening over there. So this happens in 3D and it's very cool, but how do I create this? It's not using any kind of wiggle expressions or scaling of the footage, because that wouldn't work. We have real depth of field here. We have real like camera stuff happening in the scene. And how I have created this is using 3D compositing. And if you have any interest in learning 3D compositing, which is basically exactly what you're seeing here, if I go to a custom view here, you can see that I have split up the clip in isolated, and then we have a digital camera moving around there. So to create this camera movement, and I won't be showing it in this tutorial, unfortunately, because that would take too much time. So if this tutorial hits 100 likes, I will give you guys a 3D compositing tutorial really soon. And if this video doesn't hit 100 likes, then I will drop it at some point. So here we have our effect here, and we want to recreate this, the shrinking effect, which looks pretty cool, and also this already shrink, this Ant-Man in the Ant World version. All right, so now we know what we want to do. Let's go ahead and jump in to build this effect from scratch. All right, you ready? Let's go. So what we're gonna do is begin with this exact same close-up shot here. That's what we're gonna begin with. So what we need is two pieces of footage. We need a close-up clean plate, is just the background plate we see of the environment we're gonna move in, and then we have a footage which is basically our talent green screened or blue screened in front of there, so we can isolate the character from the background and use them as separate layers. So when you have captured that, or if you don't want to capture it, you can also download my footage in the description down below. Like in every video, you have the possibility to download to train with my footage. So once you got that, let's go ahead and take our clean plate and drop it into a new composition. I will go ahead and rename this whole composition to tutorial, so we can keep ourselves nice and organized. And this is our clean plate we want to use. Then what we're going to take is our footage, or our blue screen, green screen footage here. You can see my sexy face over there. And let's line this up like real nicely here. Begin the clip somewhere around here, having our stuff happening, having our acting. We just need a couple frames after that. Yeah, cool. There. Then we can hit the end key, which is to end the composition somewhere around there. We can zoom into the timeline so we can see more what's happening. So the next step after this is if we close up, we just have the background behind the blue screen. So what we do is we key out our our guy here, myself, the character, and I won't dive deep in how to key out your footage, since I have a dedicated tutorial on how to do chroma keying inside Adobe After Effects. I will link that up in the cards, or you can find another tutorial on the internet, or since I expect you at this point that you know how to chroma key. So I'll be back at exact that point of time when I have chroma keyed out my footage. Alright, so now we have keyed out our footage. I have separated the clean plate and our character, so now we have full control of everything we do, so we can accomplish the effect easier, so we have a good result in the end. So it's really important we isolate the layers, or it would be really hard or not even impossible. Alright, so next thing to do is to actually scale the footage down. So what we do is we need to do the animation where the character is me, like when I hit this, when the watch or my whatever the machine I hit here, so to scale me down, to minimize me, so when I hit him I will scale down to a micro level. So how I do this is we go first ahead and use the anchor point tool to move our anchor point. So okay, it saves the project, that's good. Let's hit the Y on our keyboard, or just hit the pan behind tool, and the anchor point tool is therefore really important. Depending on where it is on the comp, all scaling action will happen from here. So if I put the anchor point here and start scale the footage, it will scale from that point. So if I start scaling it down to a minimized level and I go to 0, it's not real realistic, so I would minimize in this direction. Not only that, I don't have body left to do this. So what I do is go back, and then I will just move the anchor point just outside the frame, somewhere around here, a little bit on my right side here. So when I do, the scaling down will happen down outside the frame, so that's really good. Alright, so let's go back here. Let's hit the stopwatch of the scale, go forward about 7 frames, so around here, and then let's go ahead and scale this down so we're outside the frame here. Let's see how this looks like. That's a quick scale down. Let's put up some motion blur. Let's activate it for the clip and for the whole comp here, and now we have some speedy motion blurry thing going on here. Okay, thanks guys for watching that. Okay, I'm just kidding. We have a lot to do here. So the thing we have our scale, which is our base effect, which is true, but now we need the ghosting to happen, the white outline stuff going on. So how we do this is we go ahead and duplicate our footage here, Control D to duplicate it. Let's go close that up. We can rename this to ghosting, and then let's go ahead and use the Control Shift D shortcut to split the layer at this point, just to the point where it begins the animation down, and just when it goes outside we can end this layer. So we just have this little small part of which we can use for the ghosting effect. So what we do now is go to the effects and presets and find the find edges effect here to give this a bit of a cartoonish look here. So what we do now is go just and click invert it. We just want to find all the edges to give our effect some life here. Then let's go find the tint effect, which makes things black and white, real nice. And then we go find the curves adjustment layer. We can just boost up a little bit on the shadow side, so we can get some more details and more edges for our whole effect here. So if I would put this to the screen transfer mode, we will have a little bit more of these outlines here. Cool. Let's keep it on normal for now. Let's go ahead and close all the other layers here, so we can just see this layer. So what we do now is we go ahead and pre-comp this layer. Keep it called ghosting comp, move all attributes and click OK. Oops, fit that up. Let's go inside that ghosting layer. And once we are inside the comp, we can see a little brick. That's basically the whole composition, and this is just a small part with all the frames of the animation happening. So what we're gonna do now is just, let's disable motion blur, so we have just like frames of ourselves going up and down. Let's go ahead and modify this so we have the composition. This composition is in the beginning of the animation. We can click the letter B on our keyboard to happen to start. In the beginning of the animation, click on the N key to go back, and or click the end. Then we can hold the Alt key and use the scroll wheel to zoom, and then so we can see our whole stuff here a little better. So this is what we have here, and what we need to do now is to render this out as image files. All right, so we want every frame to be one image file. And the easiest to do that is to render it out as a Photoshop sequence. This is really easy what we do, so don't have to stress out. So what you do is you click on Control M to go up to the render queue. You keep the best settings. You go for a lossless and take the format to Photoshop sequence. Click OK. Then have some place you want to find it. Let's make a save in a subfolder. This is for my my example I showed you in the beginning. So let's call this tutorial ghosting. Click save, hit render. Boom, we have rendered it out. Let's go back to the project. Let's find our resource menu here. And here we have our ghosting comp. So let's go ahead and drop those in as individual files. Not as a sequence file, as individual image files. So we have them right here. Let's go back to the tutorial. Yeah, good. And we have the animation beginning here. So what we do now is frame by frame. What we do is we go ahead and add those images in. So we go ahead and add the first one in there. So this is the image. We don't have to see the example anymore. And what we do here is we go ahead and scale and fade this whole image. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. So what we do is hit S on our keyboard, hit the scale option, go forward like 6 frames. That could be good. And let's bump this up to something like 130 pixels. So it goes in about 6 frames, 130 pixels. Then click T for opacity, click opacity, click Shift S so you can see the other keyframes. Go to the same keyframe and drop it down to 0. So what we have here is basically a little just fade in of our first image. So now what we do is we repeat this process, this exact same process over and over again for all our images individually, with the difference that they're happening 1 frame at a time. So I would drop the 490, the next one, put it 1 frame after. You can see the little blue cursor here happening over the timeline. You can put it 1 frame behind or after this, the normal layer. And what we do now is we can go ahead and take the scale, copy it from the previous, and then paste it, Control V here. Take the same for the opacity, Control C and Control V here. And let's make the mode to screen so we can see what's happening underneath. So boom. So now the next frame is also like going up, going down. We're having some ghosting action going on. So now we'll repeat this process over and over again so we get to our end result, or until we run out of frames. And also a good thing to remember is also the positioning of the anchor point for this scale option, because you will see it looks pretty weird if every image has the same exact comp size and anchor point, even though they look different from each other. So it looks like it's happening a really weird ghosting effect here. It's like a wave, and that's not really what we want. We want a little bit of difference. So what we do is we go to the first frame and take our pan behind tool, put it somewhere here in the middle, somewhere around here at the bottom of the back, and let's go to the next one, do the same thing here. Let's go to the next one, so somewhere around there. And once you have completed, if we go ahead and redirect this for a short period of time, we can see that we should have something like this. So this is our ghosting thing we're having going on here. So it looks pretty good. Good, awesome. So when you have that, what we're gonna do now is we can go ahead and take the tutorial, all the frames here, and then we pre-compose them and call this ghosting. Click OK. Then we can go ahead and delete the ghosting comp. We don't need that anymore. And let's just find the like this. Zoom out. Let's have the whole comp again active. Let's unsolo the layer and put it on screen. So what now happens when I hit that and comes the animation, when I hit that watch, it should, yes. So we animate down and we have the ghosting effect happening. Looks pretty good. Nice. So now the whole, the main part of this tutorial is completed, but let's go ahead and stylize this a bit before we move on to the wide shot. Okay, so for this ghosting layer, we can add some effects to give it some more turbulence and some more effects happening. So what we go ahead and find is turbulent displace. It's a really good effect for this thing. Let's go take it to twist, the mode. So let's take the amount, something like 30, and the size to something like 14. Something like that. You can play with the evolution and complexity. I usually like to give some complexity to it, not too much, just a touch. Let's go ahead and give it some evolution going on. Move to the end of the comp and give it something like 180 degrees of evolution. So we have something happening with the, it just gives some turbulence to the whole thing here. Maybe we can bump that up to something like 2. And after this, we can add something like a directional blur just to give it some, because we can't add the motion blur back in since we're not animating anything. It's just images happening next after another, so we can't like give it some motion blur, but we can add some fake motion blur by adding some directional blur. So what we do is to point the direction to the general direction of where we're shrinking, so in my case like -7, and then just give it some blur length, something like 10 pixels. Let's see how this looks like. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Now the only thing we do now is to add one frame of white, a white solid that covers the frame. That's actually something that happens in the movie itself when they change from a real action character, acting character, to a CGI character. It's just like a super flash, but it's from the movie, so it gotta be right? So let's click Control Y for a new solid. Let's call this white flash. That. Let's go ahead and trim it down. Close that off. Let's find the point when I hit the watch right there. Delete that. Let's go one frame forward. Delete the rest. We can also, for organization's sake, trim the ghosting comp, so we don't have a massive part here, which we don't see. All right, we're having something happening here. So this is pretty much the whole effect, the shrinking effect what's happening in the movies. And always you can go and speed this the animation up, and you can change anything about the ghosting if you want to. I just find this looks pretty nice. But things that really adds to the effect is, of course, the camera movement here. It looks pretty nice, but this is exactly the same method I used in the original example here. All right, so go ahead and close the ghosting comp, and what we do now is let's go ahead and move and try to recreate this shrinking scene. So really quickly to show you some tips and tricks on how to do that. So let's move on to this. Alright, so moving on to the last part of this tutorial is to give that really the Ant-Man world or the shrinking or the shrinked effect already happening. So I took the liberty to take my base footage, which is just a real macro shot of my floor, and then myself on a green screen, and just keyed myself out. So those are the two components you need. Is a full body. I like the full body look since it gives really the Ant-Man look there. The full body green screen of your acting, and then your base layer. And you can also download this in the description if you want to use my footage as reference. It's not the best shot green screen, but it works and serves its purpose. So let's go quickly over to how to blend this in nicely. So the thing is to do is we have here on our footage, on our clean plate here, we have the part which is in focus, the sharp part of the image. Rest is really blurred out. So let's go ahead and move the anchor point with the pan behind tool, Y key, or hit the button over here, and then let's move my body to that sharp point there. Now let's scale down myself to the size we want myself to be in. I found like 37 works pretty nicely. Right there. Then what we do is to give it some color correction to match it to our scene, because I'm really contrasty in the difference to the environment here. We can do something really quick, like adding a curves adjustment layer here to our wide footage, and just dump in some shadows back up like this. And that just blends it in a little bit more than just having that really contrasty looking stick guy in the middle of the floor. So this looks already a lot more blend in. Then what we do here is we can go ahead and add a shadow to our character here. And what we need to do is to go ahead and duplicate our layer here with Control D. You can close key light over there. Let's take the bottom layer. Let's rename it with hitting the return key and call this shadow. Let's make it 3D. Like that. Let's go to rotation, take the X rotation down to the floor, and then the Z rotation down to the side. Why I'm going to the side? Since the light is hitting me from the left side, so naturally the shadow should be on the right side. So really pay attention to those small details, because those add realism to your VFX shots. Okay, let's go to the VFX and presets and find the drop shadow effect there. Take the drop shadow, put it on the shadow layer, and click shadow and enable shadow only. That will make it entirely black. Let's zoom into the clip here. We can go ahead and soften it up really good, and maybe drop the opacity just a touch. But the good of using the footage itself is when I do my movements, they are matching. It's like a real life shadow. So that's why I really recommend for you to use the footage's shadow or layer. But then we can see this, because the footage is a bit soft, and scaling down a high resolution or a higher resolution footage makes me look really sharp, and I don't want to be that sharp. So what we do is find a fast blur effect. Let's go to fast blur legacy and give me like 3 pixel blur there. Nope, that was the shadow. My bad. Let's take that away. Let's take the fast blur, put it on the wide footage right here, and take the blurriness and give it a 3 pixel blur there. That looks pretty good. We can even give it a 5 pixel blur. No, 3 was a really good, just to soften it up a little bit. So let's go back to fit here. If we take a small preview, what's happening here, that I am small, I rise up, and also the fast blur really covers up maybe some of the small imperfections in your keying if that didn't go perfectly well. And then we can see the shadow doing a nice thing and moving up to my movements here. Alright, so we are really close on having this effect done. What we're gonna add is some elements here and also some camera movements, but let's go ahead and add that camera movement to begin with. I think that looks really nice to have a little camera movement happening. So let's go ahead and select all our layers, pre-compose them to shrinked tutorial like that. Let's go to the beginning, hit A for anchor point, alt click the stopwatch, type in wiggle. So now we're using the wiggle expressions, open parentheses, once a second, comma, 4 pixels, or the amount of 4, having just little shake there. Right. Let's go ahead and click on R for rotation. I'll click the stopwatch again, wiggle. This time once a second, comma 0.5 pixels, so really small amount of rotation. Okay, that was a comma. So point. Have some rotation happening also. That's quite a much of rotation. Let's drop that to 2. Nice, a really subtle amount of camera blur. But when you're working with wiggle and moving the composition, you can see the composition's ending at a point of this video. We need to cover that up. We could scale the footage, but then we'll lose quality. So in this case, I really like to use the effect motion tile. The effect motion tile to put that on our shrinked out element there. Let's take the output width and height to something like 200 pixels and then mirror the edges. So now if we move the comp, we have like some extra room to play with, and that helps out so we don't lose any kind of resolution or quality. Nice. So now we have our small image, and I want to add one more element here, and that is some falling ashes particles that will blur out and that will simulate like the dust particles happening on a microscopic level, since your eye don't see them really well. But when our character is really small down and we can see some big particles happening, that really helps sell the effect that this guy is really small down on Earth, so to speak. So what we do is I have some ActionVFX falling ashes in 2K resolution here. I will drop them over here, and they're really cool to have those approach. And I actually have a promo code to their website that gives you 20% off the any purchases there, which is pretty cool. Check out that code in the description down below and get yourself some really cool stuff. They also have a lot of free elements. Definitely go check out ActionVFX. They have amazing action stock footage for us VFX creators, so really go check those out. So this is just the falling ashes, but you can use any kind of dust particle or something you can find on the internet. They're full of them. You just have to search. So what I want to do is, since this is shot in 60 frames per second, I can time stretch this to two times, so it's double slower, so it's really slow and nice particle stuff happening. We'll go to scale this up. Let's go to find a lens, camera lens blur. Find the camera lens blur over there. Let's take the hexagon to a decagon, whatever, that sounds like a Megatron enemy. Now let's blur this out so we have like this bokeh thing happening, and then we can go ahead and drop the opacity down to something like 40%. Let's take a quick preview here. Alright, so once we have got that preview, we are pretty much done here. We can see some really cool macroscoping happening. We see the ashes, like the dust particles that we simulate here. They look really good at this small level, so that gives the illusion that we are really small here. And then we have a really convincing shrunk down effect here. So we have created two cool effects in one tutorial here. So what we do now is just you add your favorite color correction and color grade, add your sound effects, and damn, you have a pretty good effect in your hands right there. So that wraps up this tutorial pretty much. I like this video. If you did like it, leave a comment down below, give this massive like once more, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Alright, so subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, ring the bell, ring the notification bell so you never miss out on a new video, and that's pretty much it. My name is VK, and remember that name, and I hope you guys to see you guys in the next one. So until then, stay awesome.